Single dad walked out his interview in the rain holding his daughter's hand. The CEO dropped everything and ran after him, the job he almost didn't get. Jake Mercer had ironed that shirt 3 times. He didn't own an iron. He'd borrowed one from his neighbor, Mrs. Patterson, a 70-year-old retired school teacher who had pressed the shirt herself when she saw how badly he was doing it, and then sent him off with a thermos of coffee and the words, "You look like somebody worth hiring." He'd left Gracie with her while he took the bus downtown. Gracie was 5. She'd woken up that morning with a stomach ache. Not serious, just nerves, the kind she got when she sensed something important was happening. She had this way of knowing things before he said them out loud, like she was tuned into a frequency nobody else could hear. She'd held onto his sleeve at the door and looked up at him with those wide blue-gray eyes and said, "What if you don't come back?" He'd crouched down to her level. "I always come back," he said. "That's the one thing I will never stop doing." She studied his face for a long moment, the way 5-year-olds do when they're deciding whether to believe you. Then she let go of his sleeve. He caught the 8:47 bus. Harmon Dynamics occupied floors 14 through 22 of a glass tower in downtown Charlotte that was so clean and polished it made Jake feel underdressed just standing in front of it. He was wearing his best slacks and the borrowed ironed shirt. His resume was in a manila folder he'd bought specifically for this, $3 at the drugstore, which he'd actually thought about before spending. He was interviewing for a logistics coordinator position, a real job. Benefits, health insurance, consistent hours. The kind of job that meant Gracie could go to the dentist without him calculating whether they could afford it this month. He needed this more than he'd needed anything in 2 years. The lobby receptionist sent him to the 14th floor. He sat in a waiting room with 4 other candidates, all younger, 2 in suits that fit properly, 1 reviewing notes on a tablet. Jake straightened his folder on his lap and looked straight ahead. They called his name at 10:15. The interview panel was 3 people, an HR director named Frank, a department manager named Stacy, and, unexpectedly, the company's CEO Claire Novak, who had apparently decided to sit in on candidate interviews that week. Jake knew who she was. He'd looked up the company the night before while Gracie slept. Claire Novak, 34. Took over Harmon Dynamics from her father 3 years ago. Doubled the workforce. Expanded into 4 new markets. The kind of person business magazines described with words like visionary and relentless. In person she was smaller than he'd expected. Sharp dark eyes, quick. She was watching him from the moment he sat down, not evaluating the way Frank was, not checking boxes. Just watching. The interview started well. Jake answered the standard questions cleanly. He'd practiced them at the kitchen table with Gracie sitting across from him pretending to be the interviewer, which had mostly turned into a giggling contest, but it still helped more than he expected. Then Frank asked the one he hadn't prepared for. "Mr. Mercer, I notice a 2-year gap in your employment history. Can you walk us through that?" Jake looked at the folder in his hands. "My wife passed away," he said, 31 months ago. Gracie, my daughter, she was 2 years old. I stayed home to take care of her because we had no family nearby, and I couldn't put a 2-year-old in full-time care while I was still figuring out how to keep both of us moving forward. The room went very quiet. I freelanced when I could," he continued. "Logistics consulting, remote project coordination, contract work. It's documented in my materials. But I won't dress it up or give you a polished corporate answer for it. That's what happened. That's why the gap exists." Frank wrote something down. Stacy looked at Claire. Claire was still looking at Jake, not at his folder, not at her notes, at him. The interview continued for another 20 minutes. It ended professionally, politely. Firm handshakes. "We'll be in touch." Jake thanked all 3 of them, walked to the elevator, and pressed the lobby button. He already knew. The moment Frank's pen moved after the gap answer, Jake had seen that look before. Too complicated, too much going on at home, not said out loud, never said out loud. Just written down in careful, neutral language that meant the same thing. The elevator doors opened. He walked through the lobby and out into the rain. He'd texted Mrs. Patterson before leaving the interview floor, running a little late. "Can you bring Gracie to meet me outside?" She'd responded within seconds. "Already on our way." She wouldn't wait. So when Jake pushed through the revolving glass door and stepped onto the wet plaza, Gracie was already there, standing under Mrs. Patterson's umbrella in her yellow floral dress and little denim jacket, eyes scanning the door until she found him. She dropped the umbrella and ran. He caught her, lifted her, held her tight against his chest. She smelled like Mrs. Patterson's house, lavender and warm bread, and she wrapped both arms around his neck and didn't let go. "Did you get it?" she asked into his shoulder. "Not today, sweetheart," he said quietly. She didn't say anything, she just tightened her grip. That was Gracie. She didn't try to fix things or say the right words, she just held on harder. He set her down gently, took her small hand in his, and they started walking. Rain tapping on the wet plaza, her little yellow dress bright against the gray sky. Her hand warm inside his. He didn't look back at the building, he was done looking back. He almost didn't hear her over the rain. "Mr. Mercer!" He turned. Claire Novak was coming through the revolving glass door at something close to a full run. Emerald green blazer darkening at the shoulders from the rain. White folder pressed against her chest. Heels clicking sharp and urgent on the wet plaza stone. One hand was stretched toward him, like she was genuinely afraid he'd keep walking and disappear. He stopped. She covered the distance quickly, slightly breathless, stopping a few feet in front of him. She looked at him, then at Gracie, then back at him. "I owe you an apology," she said. Jake waited. He was good at waiting. "Frank was going to pass on you," she said. "Standard risk assessment, the employment gap, the single-parent situation, potential scheduling complications." She paused. "I overruled him." Jake stared at her. "The answer you gave, about staying home, about keeping both of you moving forward." She stopped, pressed her lips together. "My father raised me alone after my mother left. I was 3 years old. He turned down 2 promotions over 4 years because the travel schedule would have kept him away from me." Her voice was composed, but her eyes weren't completely. "He didn't tell me any of that until I was 26. I spent years thinking he just plateaued in his career. Turns out he was just choosing me every single time." She held out the folder. "The position is yours, full benefits, standard hours, no mandatory weekends without 30 days advance notice, start date is flexible." Jake looked at the folder, looked at her. "Why did you come yourself?" he asked. "You could have called. You could have sent HR." Claire held his gaze. "You were already walking away," she said. "Some things you have to run for." Gracie tugged his hand twice, her signal that she had something important to say. He looked down. She was staring up at Claire with the full, unfiltered seriousness of a 5-year-old conducting an evaluation. "Are you going to be my daddy's boss?" she asked. Claire crouched down to Gracie's level, genuinely, all the way down in heels on wet pavement, and met her eyes directly. "I might be," she said. "Is that okay with you?" Gracie thought about it, the way she always thought, fully, without rushing. "Did you make him feel bad?" she asked. Claire didn't flinch. "Almost," she said, "but I caught myself, and I came to fix it." Gracie looked up at her dad. He gave her the smallest nod. She looked back at Claire. "Okay," she said firmly, "but if you do it again, I'm going to be very disappointed." Claire laughed. Sudden, genuine, completely unguarded. The kind of laugh that had nothing boardroom about it whatsoever. "Noted," she said. "I'll consider myself warned." She stood back up, smoothed her blazer, extended her hand to Jake. He shook it. "Monday?" she said. "Monday," he said. He was good at the job, better than good. He had the kind of methodical calm that came from years of managing everything alone, making decisions under pressure with no safety net and no margin for error. He never missed a deadline. He never dropped a detail. And he left at exactly 5:15 every single day, because Gracie's after-school program ended at 5:45, and he refused to be the last parent through the door. Nobody gave him trouble about it. 3 months in, Stacy told him he was the most organized person on the entire floor. 6 months in, Frank stopped him in the hallway. "For what it's worth," Frank said carefully, "I'm glad she overruled me." Jake nodded once. "Me too." That evening he buckled Gracie into the back seat, started the car, and pulled out of the parking lot into the late afternoon sun. She had paint on her hands from art class and a band-aid on her left knee from a playground incident she'd already forgotten.